You're listening to The Audit, presented by IT Audit Labs.
Hello, and welcome back to The Audit, presented by IT Audit Labs. I'm Mandy, and joining again today is Eric, Kyle, and Nick. Hey, guys.
Hey, Mandy.
I think we're going to jump right back into our personal information security in a modern era. And Kyle, what are we going to talk about today?
Yeah, today we're talking about personal email and personal messaging, including, SMS and MMS on your cell phone.
We all do it.
We all do.
What's MMS?
Multimedia messaging service. So things like your standard video and photo messages that get sent between devices.
Like when someone on your security team sends you a picture of a really cute kitten jumping over rainbows and you open it, like, why would you send me this? And here it was to capture your geo coordinates so they could tell you exactly where you were at that time. That's the kind of stuff I deal with over here.
Was that person on this call, Mandy?
They're not, but they are showcased on other episodes, so I'll be sure to call them out later.
So kicking it off, personal email security, right? What we like to talk about with this is that those free email services that are very convenient and very easy to set up, things like Gmail, Yahoo, Hotmail used to be a thing, but Outlook, MSN, I'm sure you can list off more than what I'm coming up with here. They scrape your contents of your emails as well as kind of the metadata and the usage statistics to, again, add to that big data portfolio about you. So they're looking at things like message times, what you're writing about, who you're sending to, contacts that you often send to, right? How long the messages are, if you have any attachments on them. You don't really have any expectation of privacy when you're using their servers to do your mailing, although they are convenient, right? So one of the things that we like to recommend as security practitioners is to use a paid subscription to a trusted email service. Something like Proton Mail, which I use, and I know a lot of other people that use, security and non-security people alike. Mailbox.org is another encrypted service, and Tutanota is another one. One's a little harder to say and a little weirder, so I tend not to use it, but it does email encryption and security similar to Proton Mail. Some of the pros of using a service like this are your emails are encrypted at rest and in transit, and the email provider does not look into the contents, and there's no way for them to decrypt your emails as they sit on their servers, right? You can feel a bit more secure in kind of sending and storing emails and personal information through these services because the email is going to be encrypted. And some of these have, different applications like Google. They have a calendar, a drive, a VPN service that you can purchase as add-ons. Some of the downsides to using something like this are sometimes you run into non-deliverable addresses. So I'll give a story about that. And this costs money. But when I was applying for, home mortgages, one of the lenders that I was working with to secure financing to purchase a home, I was emailing their broker with my Proton Mail. And for a while it was all working, and then they just stopped receiving my messages. And so I asked this mortgage lender that I was working with, like, hey, I've been sending you emails and you haven't been replying. And she said, oh, well, that's weird. I don't know why. So she checks in with her IT guy who says, oh, that's because they're encrypted as they're coming in, and we don't allow encrypted emails to come into our systems because
which is crazy.
Yeah,
because of what you're giving them.
Yeah,
and
all the information.
Shut the front door.
And if there's any PII, it's going to be with a mortgage company.
And he says, well, why is he using an encrypted email? Only terrorists use encrypted emails.
Oh my gosh, who is this guy?
Yeah. I could give you a name, but I'm not going to.
Let's get some names, Kyle.
Never do business with that company. Wow.
Yeah,
as the person on the call who isn't a security engineer, I didn't know and was shocked to find out that what I'm sending via my Gmail account was not private to me and whom I was sending it to.
Yep.
And I'm sure I'm not the only person out there who's not in the cybersecurity space who would be shocked by that.
Well,
And it kind of makes me think of an earlier conversation. Like I tell my kids, if it seems too good to be true, like don't do it on the internet. And this is a free service. Like, why didn't I even think of that?
Yeah.
I'm more curious on what he meant by only terrorists use that. So anybody that's trying to be safe is.
I think his logic behind it was, well, what are you trying to hide with an encrypted email, right?
I don't know my social
only my
security
PII.
number,
I was gonna
my
say-
financial documents.
Everything
Yeah,
that you asked
exactly.
for.
Right.
We need to go find that company and help them with a security
They,
assessment.
they need an
they
audit.
need this presentation for sure.
Yeah. So,
Wow.
and funny enough, this dude who actually works there, I was in cybersecurity master's program with his nephew. So, it's not like his family's that far from InfoSec, but I just
We
thought
gotta
it was,
take his nephew out for a beer so that we can help him help his
Do
family.
you think that he would be a guest on the podcast?
I could reach out to him. He might be.
I don't want to showcase that kind of ignorance.
No, I know.
Now that we're terrorists and all.
Yeah.
I've got a funny Proton Mail story, and it involves Kyle here. Now, Kyle, we've known each other for a couple of years, and back before we knew each other, you were applying for a position, and you're, aside from your astute security knowledge, one of the things that stood out in your resume were you were the first applicant that I had seen that used a Proton Mail email address. And it's like, okay, this guy's really a security practitioner, right? Everybody else is using like a Yahoo or a Gmail or a Hotmail. Yeah, he gets it. And I think I've seen, I don't know, probably 100 resumes or more since then. And maybe only one, maybe two other resumes where they were using a PM.me or a Proton Mail. And I don't get it. Like, if you're a security practitioner, why are you emailing your resume in with a Gmail account? Like,
Practice what you preach, practice what you learn.
Yeah, it's a hot button for me.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be Proton Mail, right? Like, there's plenty of services out there now that provide this type of security. But yeah, to that point, I mean, we know beyond the reason of a doubt that free services are just scraping up all this information. So if you're uncomfortable with that, or you're recommending other people do it, I mean, just do it. So, and it's really not that expensive. I mean, it's a couple bucks a month. So
I mean, we pay that for iCloud storage. I feel like nowadays you're just, you buy an app. It doesn't seem unreasonable.
Yeah.
Cool. What else? My eyes are opened.
They've got other offerings too, don't they? Like VPN.
Yep. Proton's got a VPN. I think Tutanota, mailbox.org, and Proton Mail all have an encrypted calendar application as well. And like a Proton Drive. So you can do some secure encrypted cloud storage out there as well. They're not as fully developed as like what Google has, but they're getting better and they're constantly in development. And I think I just opened up the calendar app the other day, and there was an option to import from Google Calendar. So you can, ditch your Google Calendar and throw it into Proton and, add other people to it and share your calendar. So it's getting a lot more robust.
Well, and wasn't it that Proton Mail just did a third-party audit that basically proved they're not actually keeping logs
on their VPN? Yep.
And why is that important for people out there like me?
I mean, we'll talk about it more when we get to the VPN episode, but essentially a VPN anonymizes your traffic, and there's certain VPN providers, especially ones that offer free options or are less than upfront about how they're using that data. And rather than, your ISP, your internet service provider, collecting your browsing information and selling it to advertisers and people like that, the VPN is basically doing the same thing that the ISP would be doing, but with your VPN traffic data. So for them to not be collecting logs and have no way to access your traffic logs, you know for sure that where you're navigating to when you're connected to the VPN is known only to you.
Oh, that's great. Thanks, Kyle.
Couple quick tips on email security, right? Using a paid secure inbox for personal correspondence or PII information is always really good. But there's always more you can do to kind of keep your email secure and keep yourself out of spam lists and things like that. So I know something that I do is I have my personal Proton mail that I use. It has all my encrypted data, and I tend not to give that out to advertisers, vendors, things like that. And then I've got a couple free email inboxes that I use to sign up for rewards cards, services. If someone at Walgreens or CVS is like, sign up for our rewards program and it sounds like a good deal, I'll give them my junk free email inbox, so that it's then hooked up to that account. So then rather than getting all that spam and junk in my personal email, I'll just collect it somewhere that I never sign into and use that to connect to my rewards cards. So things like that. Again, if you want
Really smart.
to take an extra bonus tip, you can give it some goofy name about it being a junk box or stop wasting my time, so that when they ask you for your email at the restaurant or the rewards points, you can give them a little middle finger, figuratively.
That's the person that would probably be labeled the terrorist, not the person that's using good security.
Yeah, I'll be one of both.
I think we had talked about this before, and I think Eric brought it up about putting the period in the email. So like for Gmail, this works. So like you could use your first name and your last name or vice versa and put the period in between them. But when you actually signed up for Gmail, you didn't use the period. Right? So Gmail recognizes it. So you could email or use the same technique, Kyle, that you're saying, where for all those rewards, you could use the period and then go into your tools, create a rule that sends all those to the trash can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So like if you're Nick Mellum,
yep,
and you're at the coffee shop,
yep,
your email address could be nickmellum@gmail.com, but
right.
We're going to give the coffee shop Nick.Mellum. Either way, Gmail is going to recognize it as one and the same, but you can create that auto rule so you just don't have to deal with the crap.
You'll never see the email, just go straight to the trash can.
Very smart.
The Nick Mellum email address, can we take a little side jaunt now?
For the poem?
See if we... yeah. Let's take a little look-see here, shall we?
Let's introduce Have I Been Pwned for anyone who's not familiar.
Yeah, so Have I Been Pwned is it Troy Hunt? Is he the one who developed this?
Yeah, it is.
But it's essentially he's got a database of data breaches that he maintains here on this website. Meaning if a website was hacked or a service was hacked and your email was registered to that service with a password, and a hacker was able to get into that system and compromise or tie together username and password or password hash, right? He has an entire list of what those combinations are. And he provides a free service here on this page to look up your email address and determine whether your email has been involved in a breach, which breach that happened to be, and then whether you should be, changing your password based on what you find. So,
bless him. So we are looking up one of your real accounts there, Nick?
Yep, this is an old one that has been hooked up with quite a few. I think it was 7 of them. You can scroll down and see all of them.
I was part of the MyFitnessPal breach too. Someone out there knows that I don't really work out often.
I think. Go ahead, Eric.
Yeah, this is interesting, right, Nick? Because you being a security practitioner, you're using a different password for each of these sites, and you've got 2-factor authentication turned on wherever you can. This Robinhood one is interesting. They didn't get passwords, but they did get email addresses. And presumably the same thing with this Park Mobile, where they got email addresses and passwords. If they were able to reverse engineer and crack this password, then they could try that same username and password against your Robinhood site, which
Bank accounts, all of it.
yeah, if that didn't have two-factor authentication on it, then somebody could be trading all of that Google stock that you have.
Well, and I'm
Yes.
interested to see that a customer service representative was socially engineered. I know DEF CON Kyle, you had watched social engineering competitions. I would love to get to hear that call and how that happened, because that's a lot of exposure.
Yeah,
We
it was-
employ risks.
Yeah. Well, I mean, and that's one thing that we always do say as security practitioners, right? The number one risk in any business is the human element, right? It's not always the technical. So many, I mean, even like the most recent Uber breach that was announced was done via social engineering and collecting information from somebody over the phone and through WhatsApp, right? They
Didn't
didn't
they
do
get the
any.
admin password, Kyle?
Yeah, and they got an admin password from this person, signed in and stole a bunch of data. So, I mean, really, they didn't have to know the technical details on how to break into the systems. They just had to trick someone into providing information, and they stole everything. So,
And
pretty-
like us, you
pretty
could get you a man who do both, like Nick Mellum.
Well, now that people have Nick's Gmail address, it'll be
I hope
interesting to
you
see what kind of
spam 'em.
stuff he gets. Yeah, I mean, I know he likes pictures of kittens
No.
and recipes with Beyond Meat or Impossible. Any sort of vegan meat, he likes that.
Yep, I love it. I'll forward it on.
Well, thank you for sharing this, Nick. That was really interesting. And
Yep.
if you want to check out itauditlabs.com, we'll have the link for Have I Been Pwned. We'll definitely share a lot of the different articles and references we're having throughout this podcast series for you. And we encourage you to check it out yourself.
And Nick may have, do you want to post a couple of your favorite vegan recipes?
Along with some of the social engineering websites, but we'll definitely go back to that website in future episodes too, to unpack quite a bit more.
Yeah, and just quick note on personal messaging security, right? When we think about text messages, right, most people, if it's not between iPhones, right, with iMessage, the typical format for sending a text message is via SMS, which is short messaging service. That's your standard text, or MMS, which is a multimedia messaging service. These are going to be your texts and video messages. Neither of these are encrypted. These are being sent just across the airwaves through your cellular provider and, you know, routed to whatever phone number you're sending it to. That makes them fairly easy to intercept. They're collected by those cell carriers and are logged and can be provided as part of a data discovery with, you know, a law enforcement warrant. And then, you know, in the past with trying to remember what the name of the system was Edward Snowden worked on with the National Security Agency, but was it Dragnet or something like that? Essentially, they were scooped up and are able to be analyzed by the NSA or anyone with, you know, proper technology to collect these things. So, you know, they're not very secure, just like your email. They could be read, they could be viewed. If you're sending personal information via SMS, someone else could get it. So there are some ways that we as kind of security people try to prevent this.
On this one here, what's the name of the fake cell phone? It essentially spoofs the cell phone provider, and they're then able to sit as a man in the middle.
Well, Eric, if you want to look that up, I can talk about Signal here.
Go ahead. Yeah.
Cool. Kind of the best alternative that I think most of us, I think everyone on this call uses, and a lot of people in the security field use, is Signal. It's free and open source, so you can view the source code of it, you can contribute to it, you can help develop it. Free and open source is always kind of appreciated in the security world because it keeps people honest as they're developing things, and you know where the data is going as it goes into the program if you have the knowledge to look through it. When using Signal, you get that encrypted messaging between other Signal users. So any messages sent between another Signal user will be fully encrypted end to end. Likewise, you can make encrypted phone calls using Wi-Fi or data. They call it a Signal call, but that'll encrypt your voice calls as well. It's super easy to set up with a phone number. I mean, you download the app, you install it, you hook up your account, you're good to go. And it also manages your SMS and MMS messages. So if other people aren't using Signal, you can still use it as your kind of default texting app and still reach other people. And as easy as it is to set up, it's just as easy to kind of find other people. So, we're not endorsed by Signal. We're not being paid. That'd be nice if they would, but
we love it though. Every last one of us.
Yeah, we're all big fans. So it's constantly being developed. Some of these cons, there's other standard messaging apps like your iMessage or your Google messaging apps. They're a little probably a bit more slick, or they interface much more nicely with your default installation of your phone. You do lose some of that like Google connectivity in Signal. So you trade off the convenience for the security of this. And then I guess the last con is just your choice, whether it's good or bad, is it has a pretty open default policy for privacy. So it makes it very easy for other people to find you. It lets other people know that, hey, a new person on your contact list has just joined Signal. So it does hook up to your phone number. And if you're looking for something that is super private and doesn't even connect to your phone number, this one's not always the best option. But for something easy that's good, we're big fans of it.
And I did come up with the name of it. It's a cell site simulator known as a Stingray.
Stingray.
Yeah.
It was so close.
So these devices can pretend to be or simulate being a cell tower, and they then intercept the communications that your phone would have with an actual cell tower. So similar, Nick, you mentioned the Pineapple, which we can use for doing something very similar with Wi-Fi connectivity. The Stingray, which is illegal, you can do it with cellular connectivity.
That's really scary.
Cool to talk about the eye in the sky too at some point with some of the surveillance that was going on down in Juarez in Mexico, and the eye in the sky. I think there was a balloon over Baltimore that did something similar too, but we're probably getting off track, and this will be a 10-part episode or long.
Totally. And I think we're close to wrapping up. I think we just got one more slide here talking about messaging. Yeah, a few other options. Threema is one that I've also used in the past. It doesn't automatically hook up to your phone number, so you actually set up a private ID that doesn't have to tie to you at all. There's a one-time purchase, so I guess it's not completely private. Someone would know that you purchased it with a credit card or something like that, but gives you a lot of good privacy options. It's much harder to set up than Signal. You have to connect with other Threema users. So if you have a group of friends and you want a super secure private messaging application, it's really good. I like it. But again, very difficult to kind of configure and make sure it's all hooked up and ready to go. And then Telegram is another option that does secure encryption. You can do private messages with encryption on them. It's also free, has pretty good speeds with video calls, easy to find people, similar to Signal, things like that. Much more kind of used in other countries around the world and really utilized for group messaging and things like that. It's not always clear how they're making money. So I always put a caveat on this one that while it's got encryption, it's not the most open platform for knowing exactly what encryption or how the encryption works or how the keys are generated. So take it with a grain of salt. I wouldn't use it for anything super secure. But a lot of people do tend to use it for messaging, and you can set up a pretty private profile on there as well. So just some options out there. And if you want some recent news, I think it was 2-3 weeks ago, current geopolitical states in the world. Telegram, I think, was developed by a Russian guy, same guy who developed VK, which is kind of a big social media platform over in Russia, Eastern Europe. Kind of like Russia's Mark Zuckerberg, I think, is kind of how they describe him. When he created those platforms, he wouldn't give the encryption keys or like all the stuff over to the Russian government, and I think actually fled the country to keep his secrets to himself. But I think that the Russian government claimed to have cracked the encryption on Telegram just like 2-3 weeks ago. So I don't think that's been corroborated yet that I know of, but they claim to have broken the encryption on that. So again, take it with a grain of salt.
Other geopolitical news, Signal is looking for some volunteers to help with the trouble over in Iran and help Iranians bypass their government censorship during the protests using Signal. So there's, if you just search out Signal blog, help people in Iran reconnect to Signal, there's a request from the Signal community to build those proxies.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
that's pretty cool. Makes me love Signal even more. If they don't want to sponsor us, I'll take merch.
I'm down.
Well, thank you guys. I found this fairly interesting, and I'm going to have to come up with another word that isn't invasive and scary, because I think those are always my initial thoughts is like, oh, this is icky. Like what people don't know, right? But I believe what you presented is just really eye-opening. So next time, what are we going to talk about?
Internet browsing.
Internet browsing, VPNs, ISPs, passwords and forms.
Cookies. Cool. Well, I expect that to be a bigger, larger conversation that might even break into more part series, because there's just so many avenues and things to talk about as it relates to these topics. So thanks for joining us again on The Audit. Please check us out at itauditlabs.com, and we will see you again.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank
Bye.
Want security leadership without the headcount? As an extension of the team, IT Audit Labs will provide the experts to guide and counsel your company. We will start by creating a custom security program that caters to your industry while providing transparency and remediation to improve cyber posture while reducing risk. Contact IT Audit Labs to find out more.